On the evening of the 14th of October 1781, approximately 400 American soldiers prepared to attack one of the final British positions protecting Yorktown. In front of them stood Redoubt No. 10, a compact earthen fort surrounded by a ditch, sharpened branches, heavy wooden stakes, and open ground exposed to British fire. The Americans would have to cross that ground in darkness, force their way through the obstacles, climb the walls, and overpower the defenders at close range. Then came the order that made the mission even more dangerous. The assault troops would advance with unloaded muskets. There would be no opening volley and no stopping to exchange fire. If the British discovered them early, the Americans could not simply stand and shoot back. The officer chosen to lead them was Alexander Hamilton. Today he is remembered for writing and politics, but in 1781 he was thinking about glory. For years, he had served beside Washington as one of the commander-in-chief's closest aides. He drafted letters, carried sensitive messages, and helped manage the army's enormous correspondence. It was important work, but Hamilton hated it. He had begun the war as an artillery officer and believed he deserved an independent battlefield command. While other officers built reputations in combat, he remained behind a desk, writing orders in Washington's name. He wanted more than to be remembered as a secretary. He repeatedly pressed for a command of his own. The relationship with Washington grew strained, and he finally left the commander's personal staff in 1781. Later that year, he finally received command of a light infantry battalion in the division led by the Marquis de Lafayette. After years of waiting, he had become a battlefield commander. By the autumn of 1781, the war had reached Virginia. Lord Cornwallis established his British army at Yorktown, beside the York River, expecting the Royal Navy to keep him connected to the sea. Instead, a French fleet blocked the Chesapeake. Washington and the French commander Rochambeau brought their combined armies south, trapping Cornwallis. But being trapped was not the same as being defeated. The British had constructed a defensive line around Yorktown, and Washington could not simply order a direct charge. American and French soldiers dug the first parallel, dragged artillery into place, and on October 9th, the Allied bombardment began. Buildings shattered, British artillery positions were damaged, and defenders moved into shelters whenever possible. But Washington needed to bring his siege guns even closer. On October 11th, the Allies began digging a second parallel, only a few hundred yards from the British defenses. But two advanced positions, redoubts 9 and 10, blocked the trench from reaching the river. Those redoubts had to be taken. The French would attack Redoubt 9, and American light infantry would attack Redoubt 10. The honor of leading the American assault was first given to another officer. Hamilton objected, appealed to higher authority, and won the assignment he had been waiting years to receive. This was not a ceremonial opportunity. Redoubt 10 stood across roughly a quarter mile of exposed ground, defended by muskets, artillery, grenades, and earthworks. The Americans would approach with bayonets and unloaded guns because surprise was their best protection. One premature shot could expose the entire column. Pioneers carrying axes would move first and open paths through the abatis. The main frontal column would follow, while another detachment moved around the rear to cut off escape and attack from another direction. The soldiers attached white paper to their hats so they could recognize one another in darkness. They fixed bayonets, left their muskets unloaded, and waited for the signal. At approximately 7 o'clock, the Allied attacks began. Hamilton's men moved across the open ground toward Redoubt 10, and for a moment, the darkness concealed them. Then British sentries detected the movement. The defenders rushed to the parapet and opened fire, illuminating the redoubt with musket flashes. Artillery and grenades struck the ground around the attackers. The Americans reached the outer obstacles, but the pioneers had only begun cutting through the branches. Waiting would have allowed the British to keep firing into a packed mass of men. So the Americans forced the attack forward through the openings already cut. They climbed across damaged branches, dropped into the ditch, and struggled upward beneath the wooden stakes projecting from the wall. Men climbed on the shoulders of the soldiers below them. Some were struck before reaching the top. Others pulled themselves over the parapet and met British bayonets at arm's length. The American infantry did not stop to establish a firing line. They entered the position with bayonets. Then the rear detachment appeared from another direction. British defenders, who had concentrated against the frontal assault, suddenly faced Americans entering from behind them. The resistance collapsed. Within minutes, Redoubt 10 was in American hands. The attack was violent, but it did not become a revenge killing. Hamilton later emphasized that his soldiers spared defenders who stopped resisting. That mattered to him. This was the glory he had demanded, but he wanted it remembered as discipline rather than slaughter. Nearby, the French also captured Redoubt 9 after heavier fighting. Before morning, both positions were incorporated into the second parallel. Now Washington's artillery could move closer to the British lines. The circle around Yorktown tightened. Cornwallis attempted a sortie to disrupt the siege, but it failed to change the situation. He then tried to move men across the York River, and bad weather ruined the escape. There was nowhere left to go. On October 17th, a British drummer appeared on the earthworks while an officer raised a white flag. Negotiations began, and on October 19th, Cornwallis's army marched out and surrendered. The capture of Redoubts 9 and 10 did not single-handedly win Yorktown. The victory required Washington, French naval power, Allied siege engineers, artillery crews, and thousands of soldiers from two armies. But the assaults removed the last positions blocking the second parallel. They allowed the siege guns to move within devastating range, making the British position nearly impossible to hold. Yorktown did not instantly end the war, but Cornwallis's surrender broke political support in Britain for continuing the major offensive war in America. Hamilton had finally received the glory he wanted, but the most revealing part of the story is not that he led the attack, it is what he accepted in order to lead it. When he finally received a battlefield command, the assignment came without safety. He could not protect his reputation from a distance. He had to cross the same open ground and enter the same fort under British fire. The empty muskets made the logic of the mission brutally clear. Once the attack started, success did not depend on who could fire the most bullets. It depended on whether the men kept moving while every instinct told them to stop. History remembers Alexander Hamilton as a man of paper, the essays, the reports, and the financial plans that helped define the United States. But before he could help build that country, the country first had to survive. And on a dark night at Yorktown, the man remembered for his words finally received the command he had spent years demanding. Washington gave him 400 soldiers, one British redoubt, and sent him forward with empty guns.